Wowie wow wow. You know, we hinted last night that we were actually going to watch the State of the Union, and I'm not going to lie, I kind of didn't think we would, but I might be a little hungover. The drinking game that we played, every time Joe Biden slurred, every time he gaffed, every time we were playing by you're familiar with a fine man named Steven Crowder. He always puts up a drinking game with the rules during State of the Unions, that kind of thing, and we made the mistake of doing it. And holy cow, it has never been a better day for coffee. Miss Monica with me as ever. How are you doing?
Oh, doing well. A little too heavy leaning into the wine last night after that hour-long binge.
Oh, man. It was crazy. I mean, the bell was dinging like every 30 seconds. It was like shot, shot, shot. Oh, okay.
Well,
okay.
and I honestly, there were some in there that Crowder didn't ding for.
Oh, yeah. And we would look at each other like, he missed it. Do we do it? No, you know what? We're not going to do it. We're just going to. No one saw that.
No, because I think about 20 minutes into the speech, I had gone through,
Yes.
half a bottle?
Half a bottle.
And I decided, you know what, maybe
that's about
we'll
10
take
minutes
a
quicker
step
than
back.
normal.
Thanks.
Oh, but we are back to share some of those gaps with you because it is all fun and games until we remember this man is leading our country. Oh God,
Leader of the free nation,
leader of the free world, setting the example on the world stage, and you know, and all those very important Uranians out there. We're looking forward to
the pound of Uranians.
Okay, let's just get right into it. Yeah, as we've hinted at, from our good friends at Axios, Biden calls Ukrainians, now they're saying Iranians during the State of the Union, which is obviously some kind of brain
It's a
mush.
reasonable suggestion.
Exactly, but we heard him. He didn't say Iranians. He went Uranians. You could tell the processors were getting fried, things were getting crossed, but let's look into this a little bit. President Joe Biden, in a passionate call for supporting for Ukraine against a Russian invasion, mistakenly referred to Ukrainians as Iranians. Again, Uranians. He said Putin may circle Kyiv with tanks, but he'll never gain the hearts and souls of the Uranian people. Come on, man. Oh my goodness. This was the beginning. This was how we knew, like, our night, it's going to be a blur. It's going to be a mess. And we're going to pay for this in the morning with this drinking game. But, I mean, good gravy. The entire, like, 70% of the State of the Union was going on about Russia. And I just recalled it, you know, there's an infamous clip. And it was back in 2012. Mitt Romney was debating Barack Obama. And Mitt Romney mentioned Russia. Obama goes, oh, the 80s called. They want their villain back. And it was a joke up until the previous administration when suddenly Russia was everywhere. It was almost as though something about Ukraine and, oh man, I can't quite put my finger on it. Maybe someone's son, maybe multiple sons. Maybe it was, you know what, I think it was Bo Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Mitt Romney, and, who's the fourth monkey? John Kerry's sons, all on the board of Burisma. It's almost like there's something bigger going on here. Now, granted, I get it. I'm the coffee drinking, tinfoil hat wearing individual who notices this odd pattern. But I tell you what, we'll hop over to the more sensible side. Do some talking, Lucy.
Well, I mean, it comes down to the fact that we have someone in front of us who clearly an hour-long speech was daunting for him.
Yeah, for him.
I mean, it was daunting for everybody watching. And they even mentioned in this article, Biden as a child struggled with a stutter, which I don't remember hearing anything about that until his run for this presidency.
There's a lot of speculation on the right, of course, that it's just media coverage. It's never been a thing. It's never been documented. And it's just another one of Joe Biden's lies. Anyone who's followed his political career, I was at the top of my class. I graduated with honors. I mean, the first couple times, I believe, if I recall correctly, he ran for president. He had to drop out. This was ages ago. He had to drop out because he kept plagiarizing people's speeches. And they kept calling him on it. And ironically enough, he was plagiarizing a lot of, oddly enough, what a previous administration was saying during this speech. But I'm sorry, go on.
Well, it mentions in here
Where are we at?
He endured bullying until he worked to overcome the speech condition by reciting. Okay, here's where it should have stopped. He endured bullying until he worked to overcome the speech condition. That is a statement. That is a put it out there. That's what it's like. By reciting the words of Yeats and Emerson, like,
Oh my God.
let's make sure that we outline how intelligent he is because of who he's read.
He's just so brave.
Which,
So strong. He's a doddering, senile old man up there babbling about Uranians. Stop covering for him and just admit this entire thing was a sham.
well, and even in an article that Axios is supposedly putting out, you know, showing this gaffe, because it's obviously not something that we're all just going to walk away from. Mm-hmm. They want to make sure that we have a spin on it where we feel bad for him for having this speech impediment.
Oh, of course.
Well,
how dare you make
pull
fun
at
of
your
him?
heartstrings. Like, let's make sure that you know that he was reciting Emerson into the mirror to get over his speech impediment.
Have you worked so hard to get over anything?
And
He's
okay,
a hero.
So he's worked hard to get over a lot of stuff. We're talking about his State of the Union address.
Exactly.
A year into his presidency.
A year into his presidency and 40-something years into his political career. And now he's ready to make changes. Good for you, Joe. Good for you.
And I think that it would have been something that a lot of people could move past if it was the one and only stutter, you know, if it wasn't a continuous thing during this speech. It was painful to watch someone stand up there and you know the message that he's going to send you. Yeah. Because ahead of time, we all knew that this was going to be COVID has disappeared. Let's make sure Russia's the big bad. And I've done such a great job. Pat myself on the back.
Of course.
Okay. A lot of presidents use the State of the Union address, like you and I had talked, you know, on the way to the gym. They use the State of the Union address to increase their platform, to talk about how great they are, to brag. Yeah, you know, they're in position. Or at the very beginning of their term, to talk about the things that they're going to change and the things that they're going to enact.
Of course.
1 year in, it was what's happened in the last week. You know, it was not what's happened the entire year that he's been in office. It was what's happened within the last couple weeks.
Well, I mean, that's a pretty good segue into where we're going. Keep that thought in mind. I like where you're going with this. So our next article comes from Breitbart. Representative Lauren Boebert, a real leader, should throw that out there, heckles Biden, reminds him of the 13 troops killed in Afghanistan. Afghanistan? That's interesting. That happened under Mr. Bojiden. I don't recall that being brought up. She actually interrupted the president during the State of the Union because he made a point to say, oh, where's the thing? What's the thing? You know, the thing. Yeah, he had talked about flag-draped, there it is, she couldn't contain herself when Biden mentioned, quote, flag-draped coffins. When Biden said flag-draped coffins, I couldn't stay silent. I told him directly, he did it. He put 13 in there. Our heroic servicemen and women deserve so much better. I could not agree more. I mean, it is... Back to the basement. She tweeted back to the basement when he was done with it.
Oh, did she?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. See, Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, these people, we need to just get rid of the neocons. We need to get rid of this uniparty nonsense. The Mitch McConnells, the Kevin McCarthys. Don't get me started on some of the other ones, particularly two that are on the January 6th committee. We got to get rid of them all. And we've come a long way in doing that, but we need real leaders. We don't just need people who are going to play ball. Oh, yeah, I'm going to talk a tough fight when it's time to get elected, but then I'm just going to sit back, take my money, and not care. And the populist leaders that we have, and they don't have to be Republican. That's the beautiful thing about it. The Democrats, a couple of individuals on the Democrat side have come under fire because they're actually thinking. They're actually using their brains, and they're more liberal, more, like I said, more populist thinking, actually thinking about the people, and that is what we need. It doesn't matter. Republican, Democrat, these words don't really mean anything anymore. We just need people who give a crap about the people. And people like Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, they came from the people. They weren't born into this with a silver spoon like some of these other ones. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm rambling. Do you have any input here?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, we know this from when I was looking at running when we were down in Selma for town council even. Yep. The process that we put in place to get people to run, it's a little overwhelming and it's daunting. When you look at the steps that you have to take to even be eligible to run and to go in there and say that you're going to run. And then the thought that you have to contribute X amount of the salary that you're looking to make off of a political office, when really political office, it's a job, but it shouldn't be this I'm in it to make money job.
No, public servant.
It's a public servant position. That's why a lot of these people make a lot of money off of their books and off of their, all these other streams of income. But there's got to be a balance there, and there's not a balance.
Well, when you have like Nancy Pelosi famously getting so rich off of insider trading and stock market manipulation, and then they try to hold her to that standard of, well, athletes can't bet on their own game, so why are you guys allowed to do that? And she retorts something, and I'm going to mess this up because it's been a while and it's Nancy Pelosi, but it was like, well, it's only fair, it's freedom, and we should all be able to do it. It's like, you just leapt completely over the question, completely pushed your corruption under the rug and moved on. Like, that's the only thing we get. We get sound bites about these things, and yet they're happening right in front of our eyes. It drives me insane sometimes,
Well, and it's not just the higher ups. I mean, when we talk about politics, we talk about the presidency, we talk about senators, governors, some of these larger than life individuals, that we look at and we see. And granted, I cannot stand her, and I hate to even bring her up, but AOC.
Oh, I knew this was coming.
Yep. Which, when she first got elected, I was told by one of our good friends that she represented me. Not because of her policies, not because of anything, because we were both bartenders.
And I mean, that's great. See, that's the thing. Her story started well. And this is ignoring any of the conspiratorial stuff that you can go to, because there is a rabbit hole with AOC and her mom that if you really want to, you could follow, but it's all... who knows how true any of it is. The point is, she was a working class person, and she got it, and she worked hard, and no one can dispute this. She worked hard to get where she was, and then once she got there, all of that working class stuff just out the window. And now...
I'm gonna have to disagree with the working hard.
Did you follow her campaign to become a representative?
Somewhat, but here's the thing. I know enough about the people that I worked with in the industry that were in the restaurant industry. A lot of times, and looking at just what I know on paper about her,
of course.
She's got her degrees. She was a bartender. Okay, a lot of the people that I know that went to school to get a degree, they weren't bartending to pay off their college loans. They were bartending to make beer money for the weekends.
Yes.
This isn't I'm going to work my butt off to get above that working class mentality. I believe this is a girl who had a lot of stuff handed to her.
Oh, she did. And like I said, there is a rabbit hole there that you could go down, but at the same time, she was her okay, so when she was campaigning, she did a lot of canvassing, she had a lot of door-to-door, she had a lot of community support. She was going up against an incumbent that had been there who didn't even give her the time of day, because why would he? And it actually reminds me a lot of that trucker in New Jersey who just recently knocked out a Democrat president of the Senate who had been there for something like 12 years, and this trucker paid $50 and didn't do any advertising. That was it.
And that is a great story, but that's not the norm.
No.
That is the exception that proves the rule.
Well, that's just it. That might, because of how Democrats have been behaving.
And I would like to see...
It could be a new normal.
Well, I would like to actually we should look into where her financing came from. Because going door to door is one thing. Having the money to back you to get other people to go door to door is what we're talking about.
There is a rabbit hole there that if you wanted to pursue, you are more than welcome. And I have, and it's definitely that's a story for another day.
But coming back to Laura Boebert and what was going on at the State of the Union.
Yes, of course.
And we're going to cover whatever was going on with Nancy Pelosi.
Oh, that'll be fun. We'll get to that one shortly.
I honestly hope that.
We should have, you know what we should have done? It would have tempered it down just a bit. Instead of Joe Biden's gaffes, it would have been every time Nancy Pelosi looked like she was stroking out, take a shot. But anyway.
No, that's one of those. Like, honestly, when all of that happened with her, I mean, I turned to you and I thought we were going to see someone have a stroke on live television. Like, it really concerned me.
But hey, hold on. We have Nancy Pelosi coming up. Trust me, we have a lot to talk about. We have a lot to show. Oh, we'll get her. But we were talking about how, like you said, it was perfect point. He only talked about the last week.
Yes.
The guy has been there destroying our country, or excuse me, leading our country for a year, and all he had to talk about was the last week and what he planned to do, and
Yes.
Russia, all that. And then, of course, I love that Lauren Boebert did do what she did, because it really did bring this back into perspective. No, you screwed up multiple times. I know you don't want, no one wants to talk about it, and they're not going to, but he has humiliated us on the world stage with Afghanistan.
Well, okay, so here's another point that you and I had discussed. When he's referencing the wife of the troop, you know, it was so disconnected and disjointed. It was very much, here are the 3 bullet points to show that you're connected to this person, that you actually had a conversation with them.
Slur them together.
And that's exactly what it was. Yeah. Is she likes Ohio State, go Buckeyes, or whatever, sport ball. But sport ball. But it was not, it didn't ring true. No. It didn't have this is why we put you in a box with the First Lady, is because you have a connection, you have a story, there's something to outline there. And granted, previous to the last administration, I didn't watch a whole lot of State of the Union addresses. I was not a political person, you know this. I did not get into tit for tat what's going on each side. I didn't pick a side. When you and I first started dating, I didn't know if I was Republican or Democrat.
Nope.
I thought I was liberal.
You were just a silly little conservative girl with liberal values. It was pretty interesting that you didn't even know.
Well, because Republicans has always been painted as money hungry, you know, these people who are just out to run the United States.
The crazy thing that I think everybody is starting to realize is, you know, we say it all the time that it's just projection. Like, literally everything the Democrats accuse the other side of, they themselves are guilty of. It's classic Saul Alinsky, rules for radicals. They're literally accusing the other side of what they're doing while they're doing it to create confusion. Like, they spent 4 years calling anyone who associated with the president a Russian bot. And then what do? What does Biden do? He kills our pipeline and greenlights Russia's pipeline like day one. And despite all the nonsense about, Russia's bad, blah, 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 we're still buying oil from them. And everybody is.
And I think that leads into one of the next articles that you wanted to discuss.
Oh, yeah, we're going to get to Biden here because he made some claims and talked about some things. I'll tell you what, that's a good segue. Do we just want to hop right over to it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Bring it up here. So, and this really got under my skin. He started talking about the price of insulin. The price of insulin. Oh, it's just too expensive. He's got to make it a point. And he's not wrong. The interesting thing is, day one, he canceled Trump's order that lowered the prices. He literally is complaining about his own policy put into place a year ago because the previous administration, of course, and we're going to say, okay, so first cut the cost. Okay, so he was talking about his plan to fight inflation that will lower the cost and lower the deficit. He says, first, cut the cost of prescription drugs. Just look at insulin. 1 in 10 Americans has diabetes. In Virginia, I met a 13-year-old boy named Joshua Davis. Hey, there he is in the crowd. Sit back down, kid. He and his dad both have type 1 diabetes, which means they need insulin every day. Insulin costs $10 a vial to make. We know this. We know that the drug companies charge 30 times more. And he talks about, imagine what they'd be able to do, what you blah, 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 blah. He has to spend this much and all this. Drug companies still do this. Now, of course, the elephant in the room is how much money over the last year, technically 2 years, you got to acknowledge what's the truth, has our government given to these evil drug companies, where we literally gave them the keys to the castle and said, we're going to make it so that you can't be sued. So go have fun. Make as much money as you can. Just remember who did it. Back to the point, of course, this would not have been the case, any of this, had he not rescinded Trump's policy day one. And I actually have the article, which I'll show next, but I want to keep it one at a time. Let's see. Suspended. Okay, President Joe Biden's first actions include a directive that suspends President Donald Trump's executive order aimed at lowering the prices of insulin, which would have gone into effect on Friday, January 22nd. So he suspended it. It was supposed to be under further review, but then, of course, it just drifted into the wind, never to be heard from again. And now, during the State of the Union, he makes it a point to say, this is bad, we got to do something about it. We did something about it. You undid it, and now you're complaining about it. Start talking before I lose my cool.
Well, it just goes to show you how complicated of an issue this is and how they're trying to simplify it. Okay, $10 a vial to make. We understand that there's a certain level of profit margins that people have to make. And they're constantly developing new technologies. They're reinvesting some of this money. So I'm not saying $35 a month so everyone can afford it. That's probably not a reasonable price. Like, I know $35 a month sounds great. Mm-hmm. We want to get that out to everyone, make sure that they have their insulin. But he's going after something that was already solved. Right. So you solve a problem, you turn around and undo it so that you can complain about the problem that you just recreated.
It's interesting that this kind of harkens back to our conversation yesterday about planned obsolescence. It's like, if we don't have a problem to solve, then what do we do? Well, I guess we better create the problem again, so then we have our boogeyman to shake our finger at and say, oh, we could only work to get those insulin prices down. They were down. You know what else was down? The price of gas.
And it's almost along the lines of, okay, here's a bone. So he wants to pretend like he's going after these drug companies. He wants to pretend like he's going after, this insurance layout. All of the things that we have. I mean, candidates have been running on lowering costs.
No, of course.
And fixing the insurance industry since the insurance industry started, I think. So then we're turning around and saying, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. You're going to unfix the insulin issue, so that when you do your State of the Union, you can complain about the insulin issue, so that everyone's distracted from the rising cost of healthcare, the rising cost of insurance, inflation, how badly they screwed up the marketplace for insurance, and set up all of these government subsidies and all of this BS. And then later on, I bet you before next year's State of the Union, he comes out and sets up fixes the insulin issue the same way, the same policies that Trump had in place, takes credit for it. And then at his next address, to make sure that everybody knows that he got something done during that year. Because you're looking at coming out of the midterms, you're looking at going into the next run for the election. We haven't had, I mean, he's putting things in place to keep himself in office, which...
You really think so? Huh?
I do. This is all a planned, hey, look over here, I did something great.
I understand that. The problem is, and actually you hinted at it right there, is our country's being run by people who, let's face it, I'm not going to talk about term limits, that's a conversation for another day, but these people are senile, they've been there for 40 plus years, they have no business running them. I mean, looking at the three individuals, Kamala Harris, Nancy Pelosi, and Joe Biden, was just the saddest sight you could imagine. And the thing is, they are using these same scripted things and all that, but they're almost numb to what the world has become and how to do things now. They're still using these old talking points. Oh, tax cuts for the wealthy. Oh, this. Oh, insulin. Oh, evil, blah, blah, blah. Even though anyone with half a brain could say, you literally contradicted that last week or yesterday or whatever. Like, the news cycle, if you pay attention, and it doesn't take much, they contradict themselves every time. Anyone who's paying attention realizes this, and they do it because once they say the statement, once the words have left their mouth, that's the end of it. There's no more after that. Like, I'm going to do this and that and that. There, I said it. I've fulfilled my obligation. I'm going back to my basement. I'm going back to Delaware for nappy time. The thing is, though, and we saw it in Georgia, we saw it a little bit in New Jersey, and actually, if you've been paying attention, we just saw it yesterday in Texas. The people are done with it. That message is gone. 33 individuals, I believe, were promoted and endorsed by former President Trump in Texas. 33 of them won or are heading to runoffs with a significant margin of lead. Same thing in Virginia. Virginia, not necessarily because of Trump, but because of this, I hate to use the word because we've heard it before, but this red wave. People, the message isn't getting to it. Anyone, because every one of us can say, despite you being proud of, and let's see, what was he proud of? Oh, jobs. He said record job growth. Okay, firing everybody and then rehiring them is not job growth. That doesn't create new jobs. Our job growth is in the gutter. Inflation's high. People realize it, and it does give me just a pinch of hopium that people have woken up and the wave is coming to just knock him and all of these people just out. And I'm talking both sides of the aisle. That's why I'm very hesitant to say Republican or Democrat. It's populist versus globalist. For the people or for everyone else. At this point, we know what needs to be done.
Well, that's the thing is we know what needs to be done, and you can watch these articles and you can see these moves that they're making. Yep. A lot of people aren't paying attention, I don't think, which goes back to the fact. No, I mean I texted 2 people the day after Russia invaded Ukraine.
That's true, and these people
neither of them knew.
Weren't they? How were they on the political spectrum? I know one of them was conservative, or at least conservative values.
Well, neither of them get involved in politics.
Right, but how would you say they leaned?
I would say both of them are more middle of the road. Well,
would you say
old school middle of the road? Very
so
much along
liberal.
The way that I had a mentality of I like my life the way that it is.
Exactly.
So I work hard to do certain things.
What liberals used to be.
Yes.
That's why I don't even like using words like that, but it is true. Old school liberals, very much leave me alone. Government, leave me alone. That's the mentality that's coming. That's why it's not about Republicans or Democrats anymore. It's about, do you care about the people? Are you a populist? I will take any Democrat who says we have no business being anywhere other than here, and if someone else's border is a big priority, guess what should be a bigger priority? Our border. I don't care what the D or the R, any of that nonsense. Do you answer to Nancy Pelosi or do you answer to the people? Do you answer to Mitch McConnell or do you answer to the people? Those are the sides being drawn. The uniparty versus populist.
And it's more along the lines of we need a change in the way that we're doing things, because it seems like the Dems have the same playbook every time. And the playbook is, I'm going to do what's in my self-interest, but I'm going to set up policies that sound good to allow you to do what's in my self-interest.
They're just the masters of the spin on the name of their bills.
Well, because they want to take down the legislation lowering insulin prices.
Oh, of course.
Okay, we want to take that down, but we want the drug companies to do the right thing. Well, a company has no moral obligation. You can talk about, moral economics and all that every day of the week, but when you turn around and you say that, the company looks at the bottom line and they say, okay, well, people will pay this. Insurance will pay this. So raise the price.
Really interesting about that. You're very, very right. You're very smart because you're business oriented. 2019 was the greatest year in our country's history economically, actually in many senses, because we had a leader who thought like a businessman. He said, you know what? I don't need to threaten you and make you do this and do that. I can make a deal where you still make money, but you also look good. And it was just too much for their order, too much for what they had going. The kickbacks, I don't even think they stopped, but they probably decreased just enough to take everybody off.
Well, that's the thing is that the Dems run on this platform of, I'm going to make it easier for you to be a good person according to their moral standards and what they believe is right and what they want to sell to the American people. So let's take all of these sanctions off of Russia's pipeline.
Let's appease Putin. Yeah, that's a great idea.
And realistically, every country should be able to sing Kumbaya and hold hands and get along. And if they're going to produce something great, if we're going to produce something great, and everybody buys the best product for themselves, and that's the way the world works. That is not how the actual world works. No. It is, what do I have on you to make myself either look better or put myself in better financial standings? And when you look at someone whose economy, like Russia's economy, not the greatest.
Not in the best shape,
yeah. But what do they have going for them? They have that pipeline.
They do.
You're talking a lot of money.
It's true. I mean, they're supplying gas to most of Europe, even now, all these sanctions in place. And the crazy thing is, the sanctions it's like a smokescreen. Because even China came out and said, "Hey, don't worry about the sanctions. If anything happens to your economy, we got your back."
Well, and even with us, okay, so you cut off their airspace over the U.S. Great.
Were they flying here much?
Well, and okay, they cover what, 10 time zones, 11 time zones? How many time zones is Russia?
It's big.
It is a very
big.
large country. They don't need our airspace.
It's virtue signaling. It's like I'm still unsure what the point of that was.
It really
fly
is.
over our country. Okay.
But we're still buying oil from them.
Yeah. We are still buying oil, and Biden's talking about releasing, what was it, 60 million gallons from our reserves?
Yep.
Yeah. We just, again, to put this in perspective, we as a country go through 20 million gallons a day. So thanks for the 3 days, Mr. Bojiden.
Well, okay, and that would be 3 days of absolutely free gas. So I totally get that 60 million is supposed to alleviate over the long term. It's not supposed to magically make 3 days of free gas.
That's nothing in the long term.
I know.
It's a drop in the bucket.
Well, if you look at it in a percentage.
Oh, no, I understand what you're saying. Like, instead of just saying 3 days worth of free gas, let's make it stretch and try to bring the price down over time, except when you recall 2019, $1.50 to $2 a gallon gas, pipeline being built. For the first time in our country's history, we were the net exporter of fuels. We were energy independent. So the potential is there. For them to say, oh, we'll release some from the Federal Reserve, but we'll keep buying from Russia, that is not the solution. But they don't want to see the solution, because if the problem is solved, they have nothing to rattle about.
Well, and it's just, it's such a complicated issue that people don't seem to understand, that you cannot be reliant on someone and stand up to them at the same time.
That's it.
It's like a child throwing a fit for a parent.
Yep.
I mean, and we're stomping around and we're saying all these things and we're going to go to our room, but what are we actually accomplishing with this? We're stirring up trouble and becoming the person that we've always fought against.
So you're saying it's almost as though they're projecting something while being it. Maybe I misheard you there.
Well, and I'm not saying that Russia's the parent and we're the child. I hate to think that that's the analogy, but we are reliant on them for certain things. And to be fair, they're less reliant on us.
Oh, of course.
I mean, if you look at our relationship with China, we are weakened by the fact that we are consumers.
Yes and no. We're weakened by these god-awful trade deals that they keep putting in place to booster up China. Like, it's been that way for the last 30 years. Now China's boosted enough to the point where it says, we don't actually need you anymore. And if they really meant it, because right now it is just posturing. We're still trading with them, they're still trading with us. But if they really meant it, if they really said, you know what, separate economies, we're done, it's just chaos. What would happen?
Well, I mean, the U.S. goes back to creating and really providing for itself. But when you're looking at the overall grand scheme of things, like one of the things that Biden brought up during the State of the Union was the new plant that's being put into place outside of Columbus.
Yes, the new chip plant.
Yes, great. Like, I am glad that we are going to be making something that will advance us, that will put us ahead. But how many years out is that?
Yes, and the interesting thing about that is, I don't know if you caught it or if it was just a me thing, and it could just be a me thing, could be a paranoid thing, but I was sitting there thinking, he's talking about building plants that build chips. Who do we rely on most right now for chips that is most in danger by our own policies? Taiwan. To me, it was almost like he was very subtly saying, hey, we need to build this because we're not going to have them much longer. And I'm aware of that fact, but I ain't going to acknowledge it. You know what I mean? We know that showing the weakness we did in Afghanistan and now with Ukraine, Russia takes Ukraine, China's like, we want Taiwan, we're going to take Taiwan, and now you're too weak to do anything about it, or we just own your leader, one of the two.
Well, this is a giant game of risk, and from everything that we're displaying, we've stretched ourselves too thin.
Yes, we have. And it's crazy, considering we were literally the strongest we were 2 years ago. and they just did everything in their power to just cripple it, and now we have the worst in...
See, but I as much as we were doing well
Yes.
2 years ago, and we were heading in what I believe was the correct direction for the United States, I still don't think that we were as strong as we were making it look. Because if we were, we would not be so reliant on all these things right now.
Well, of course, but that's just it. From day one on, Biden crippled
Oh, I know, he
every
undercut
aspect
it.
of it.
He undercut
We
it, and
were
he was
there.
trying to say, well, all of these other countries need to be nice to us just because we're the United States. Well, that doesn't work.
No. See, the previous administration followed very much in the Teddy Roosevelt style of... well, it's very difficult because, of course, how bombastic Trump is, but it was
Walk
very
softly,
much
carry a big
speak
stick.
softly, carry a
Oh,
big stick.
Yes.
And, I mean, people can say whatever they want about mean tweets or anything of that nature, but a mean tweet is not loud, makes no noise, yet it can be heard around the world, and it is a show of strength. We had that. I'm not saying that, that god-awful Twitter is the solution. I'm just saying the message was there. You mess with us, you're going to pay. Now, there is no message anymore. It's please leave us alone.
Well, and I think the United States has to get over this mentality of either being the weak person or being the bully. We have to learn to essentially be that middle of the road.
We have to care about ourselves.
Yes.
We're unfortunately, we were the dude who was ripped and looking good, the 90s surfer dude, just looking awesome out there, setting the example for the world. And unfortunately, we've been a bit lethargic. We've gotten a bit out of shape. A bit's a bit of an understatement. And at this point, we're slumming on our couches going, hey, bro, I used to be so awesome. I used to be so ripped, but you should respect that I was. Instead of saying, you know what? Get your butt off that couch, get your butt on that treadmill, and you get yourself back into shape, man. Come on, son. Come on, son.
But I think every country kind of goes through that curve.
Oh, yeah.
And throughout history, you see it where they become this rock star, amazing, wonderful. Yes, I'm running the show. Yeah. And then they lean back and they become comfortable with it.
They
And
just become too lethargic, and that's the problem that has happened with us as well. And that's, I get it. I do. We need to break those cycles. But at the same time...
Well, we need to stop teaching social emotional learning in school and teach skills.
That's true, too. But again, that's to me, that is very true. And that's a great segue into where we're going towards the end there with more of our local articles.
Well, let's cover...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We're gonna get to that. And I just want to make sure that you understood that was a good point that we will get to.
Yes.
But that's just it. President Trump, love him or hate him, he saw the state of the country, and he was the guy who walked in and said, come on, dude. I need you to get up, and I need you to get back out there and be strong again. And it started to work. Then the Democrats, the COVID, everything, the COOF, I forgot I'm not supposed to say it. Everything that came into play was basically saying, don't listen to that guy. You may think you feel better. You may think you look better, but you're wrong. Sit back down. We'll bring you food. You just sit on that couch. We'll take care of you.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, and again, you can tinfoil hat it as much as you want. Unfortunately, he did lose. Here we are. And there's nothing we can do about it. Well, I shouldn't say nothing. But there's mostly nothing we can do about it aside from just hope that enough people have seen the writing on the wall to say, we have to be the ones to lift that bad boy back up. We can't rely on Mr. Bo Jiden or any of our incompetent leaders in his cabinet to do it. We as a collective have to lift the country up and say, get out there.
And we need to get away from leaders who are deteriorating.
Yes. Oh, you know what? Deterioration of leaders.
Yeah.
Fabulous segue. So, this was hilarious. We mentioned this earlier.
Well,
Quote,
okay, it was hilarious, but at the same time, it was very concerning.
Oh, yeah. It was hilarious in a sense of like, that person might die on stage. Oh,
yeah.
That's not so funny, actually.
Like now that things have come out and obviously she's fine and there wasn't something, unless they covered it up. But like I said, when she slipped like that, and then
let's go over this and show them, then we'll talk about it. So Quote, what the hell is she doing? Nancy Pelosi distracts viewers during State of the Union by jumping out of her seat, rubbing her knuckles, and grinding her teeth while Biden speaks solemnly about toxic burn pits. That was the worst of them, but as soon as we, like, Monica pointed out immediately, she's like, what's going on with her? Because she started to, I mean, and honestly, we both honestly think she was starting to have a stroke. Like, the right side of her face started to just slump.
Well, it was weird because there were a couple of different cuts to other members in the room when he's making his address. Where who was it? Was it Mitch McConnell? Yeah. Where he went to stand up.
No, that was
Schumer.
Chuck
yeah.
Schumer. Yep.
So he went to stand up and then he stopped and then he sits back down and then he's like, I know that we're gonna clap soon, almost like. You know those really horrible 90s shows that had like the laugh tracks for the audience and had the signs up?
Oh,
I feel like there should have been a sign there. Everybody stand. Applause. Everybody clap.
Applause.
And but watching Pelosi, which obviously, they don't cut away from her a whole lot. She's right there directly behind him. And she did this weird move where she like slips and it's almost like she lost function on the right side of her body, which made me go, I think she's having a stroke.
And, you scroll down here, you can see there's the part where she stood up, she rubs her hands together, and people noticed it. Like, it was so random because there wasn't an applause. She stood up in the middle of him talking about soldiers breathing in toxic smoke from burn pits. And then, here's some good close-ups. From then on, it's just, you could just see it. The right side of her face just started to slump. And it's like she noticed it because she was kind of keeping, and then she kind of
you could see her pull it back up.
But then as she's sitting there and we continued to watch her, it just started to slump to the point where her lips started to hold up just a little bit. Oh, it was insane.
Yeah, and even like you said, scrolling down into the article a little bit.
Yep.
And a lot of people are saying, oh, well, her teeth were coming out and
dentures,
and I don't know, like that reaction to me, I thought we're going into a health crisis. Like there's somebody who needs to take her and get her to an EMS, get her to someone who can help her because even the way she was like doing this,
it seemed like a sign of something going wrong.
Yes.
And like, I mean, you can see this picture here about her grinding her teeth and all that. And I mean, there's memes to be had about how goofy she looked and yada, yada, yada. Everybody's getting in on it. Drunk Pelosi. Yeah, that was another thing. She did at one point, she went to stand up and she like fell forward. It is funny. It is. It is really funny. But at the same time, at some point you go, dude, you need to retire. You need to get out of here. I don't know how much you're being paid, how much you're being bribed. It doesn't matter. You need to go. You are past the point. And unfortunately, we wouldn't let these people, I don't think we'd let these people renew their driver's license, and here they are running the country. We have two senile...
Well, let's face it, Nancy Pelosi hasn't had to drive herself anywhere in what, probably 40 years?
Maybe she's following Feinstein's lead and just having the Chinese driver around. Anywho, we have two senile, elderly individuals who have been in this position for over 40 years, and they're still there just trying their hardest to stay awake and stay conscious. We have Willie Bobby Brown's hoe over here, who we can look at her history, and we don't even have to look at how she got her start. But we can look at her history in office, and it is god-awful. I'm surprised her jaw didn't drop when Biden mentioned funding police, because if you look at her history, it is sick.
That is one that I want to address, which we didn't pull up any articles on, but the fact that they so blatantly are trying to immediately flip the narrative.
Yep.
It isn't like a slow leak and a slow burn we've seen with a lot of their other tactics, like the masks. Okay, well, drop it at this level, like slowly peel back all of these things so that when we get to the State of the Union, we can say, yes, we are all moving forward with our lives. Thanks, by the way, Joe. We've been moving forward with our lives for about 2 years. Yep. So I'm glad that the rest of you can catch up, and whatever you've been doing to, keep yourself safe. Yep. I'm glad that we can let go of it. I didn't need his approval to say that, but I'm glad that we can all move forward with our lives and stop saying the new normal.
Yes. You know what's funny?
Nothing is the new normal. Normal is normal.
Normal's normal. You said that, but then we started doing math homework with our kids, and you went, okay, maybe new math isn't.
Oh, no.
Anywho, what I will say, we will get into it. Yeah, that's a story for another day. What I will say here is that I do find it funny, like you said, that they're like, we got to let go of COVID and get back to blah, blah, blah. And people in red states are like, was anything different? And people in Florida were like, wait, other people were doing something different?
Yeah.
It's like red states figured this out a while ago, and it just really reminds you when Joe Biden was doing that speech. Oh, man, this was like 6 or 8 months ago, and he started talking about how we needed to clamp down on the virus, and we needed to do this and implicate that and make sure vaccine, blah, 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 vaccine mandates, all that stuff that he was pushing. And at the same time, when he says we, he's not talking about the American people. He's talking about Democrats. Because, as I said, all the red states, Florida, they're like, Florida, Texas, South Dakota, they were all like, wait, what are you're not talking about us.
Well, and I hate to even say Democrats, like you discussed before.
Yes, I know, it's hard. It's an easy thing.
Hard to draw that line of the right side, the left side, the Republicans, the Democrats.
Maybe you should say uniparty? I don't know.
No, because there's a lot of people out there doing the exact same thing we're doing. You know, fighting the narrative, pointing things out. You know, you've got your Tim Pool, you've got your Alex Jones, you've got Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, all people that I love watching. And then you turn around, but you have to watch both sides of it. You know, you have to watch and pay attention. And as much as I know you hate watching Psaki and her press conferences.
Oh, God, dude. And the sad thing is, man, oh, God, I just miss Kayleigh McEnany so much. Jen Psaki is god awful. I'm sorry, go on.
But we were talking about the slow burn on things. We need to fund the police statement is such a drastic retraction and a complete turnaround from what they were saying before. And I think it was because they pushed a narrative so far that they realized this is dangerous, because there were places that defunded their police and saw increases in murder rates, increases in crimes.
You right there, because you have to acknowledge the little asterisks after the word dangerous of what you said. This isn't dangerous to the people. This is dangerous to our polling numbers.
No, it's also dangerous to the people.
Oh, it is. I don't think they care, because if they cared, then when Black Lives Matter burned down cities, they wouldn't have bailed them out and encouraged it.
Well, no, because they just figured people would rebuild, which is just our way of things. A lot of the times when we're confronted with something,
I think you're giving them a lot of credit, but
we fight and rebuild. Well, that's what America does. Like we fight and rebuild.
I think you're looking at it through our mentality of, you are 100% correct. Is one of the greatest things about Americans is the American spirit, which no other country has. But at the same time, they're not looking at it like that. They're thinking, we'll rebuild. From the ashes, we'll build anew. And that's the scary thing about it is COVID was a problem until they realized, holy crap, it's midterms and we're about to get clobbered because of this crap. Hey, we did it, everybody, we did it.
Well, and that's the problem, though, with the riots. Mm-hmm. They thought, okay, we'll let them riot. It'll be over. We'll
make Donald Trump look bad.
Exactly. But with the idea of defund the police, it is not we're going to go out, we're going to riot, we're going to say that things have changed and then we're happy. It is we're taking away from a key part of our infrastructure with how our society functions. When you defund the police, you take away the sense of security that people have. You take away the consequences for criminals out there. And when you defund something like that, you're not talking let's go out and riot for a day and then have everything go back and rebuild. You're talking we're taking away this for good, moving forward without it. You're restructuring how society functions at that point.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they realize is, oh crap, we can put all of these policies into place. We cannot change the way society functions. We need police.
That's just it. They know that, and we know they know that because I didn't see them giving up their armed security. In fact, a lot of them increased it. It's just a classic rules for thee, but not for me moment that these leaders all share. It's pure hypocrisy. They were writing what was popular at the time because it made Either it was lose-lose. Either it made the president look bad because he wasn't quelling this obvious insurrection, but at the same time, if he did, they'd call him a tyrant. So he didn't. And unfortunately, we're paying for it. And what's the first thing they do against anything they consider an insurrection? Because I don't recall January 6th, the entire city getting burned down. I remember seeing pictures of it. Oh, wait, no, those were Black Lives Matter. Let me stay on topic. But at the same time, ever since that has been justification for them to push that boot down that they spent all those years accusing, oh, Trump's going to do it. He's going to do it. Of course, he never took the bait. And then what do they do when they get power? They flex that same muscle they were trying to accuse him of. It is all projection. Just every bit of it. But I tell you what, we're going to round this one about because, unfortunately, I just finished the last of my coffee, so you know I'm running low. So we're going to bring this one local. Monica brought this article to my attention, and it really does frame the Merrick Garland, the DOJ, how the administration views parents, which is really indicative of a larger problem of not only how they view parents, but how they view students. So, do you want to take this one away, or do you want me to read it?
Yeah, so Fox News covered Michigan parents call for Rochester superintendent to resign amid allegations of spying on social media. Number one, if you're going to put it out there on social media, it's not exactly spying. This is like when Russell Brand said they were searching for Trump. Well, he's got his name on his house. It's not like it's really hard to find the dude. So spying on social media. Number one, if you put something out there on social media, expect that that's the face that people see for you, and that they're going to use it against you somehow, because that's what you're presenting to the world. But where the overstep is, let me see. Okay. One Rochester parent, Elena Dinverno, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, filed a civil rights lawsuit against Superintendent Robert Shaner, PhD, last year that accused him of challenging her right to free speech after she began advocating for in-person learning in 2020 amid the coronavirus pandemic on 2 Facebook groups. So the Facebook groups are RCS Parents for In-Person Education. Clearly, the people joining that want in-person education, and Conservative Parents for Rochester. So both groups that want in-person have put it out there. It's not just this woman who wanted in-person. She joined a group of like-minded individuals to post about what they wanted. So the superintendent then went to her employer and complained that Ms. DeVerno was part of a group that was making threats against the school district. Well, a false accusation in an amended version of the complaint. So, Miss Daisy wants to have a say in this. The mother wrote a letter to her employer and made a comment to the BOE later that year, Board of Education later that year, explaining that she has never made any threats against the school district. In reporting parents, you're risking their livelihood, their employment. That is all they have right now. I know you all understand that kids are sad, hurting, giving up, and as parents, we'll go we'll do whatever is necessary for our children. Parents are hurting too. So this mother, concerned about her child's education, which we've heard over the years how parents need to be more involved. They need to be in the community. They need to be working and actually giving input. She gave her input. And having been at one of these meetings, obviously not in Michigan, but when we were down in North Carolina, there's a certain air of, how do I say it? There's a certain vibe that you get from each group there. I was on the conservative side. We were speaking about wanting no masks. We were speaking about wanting to make sure that our students were in person and learning to the best of their abilities, and how we believed that masks were detracting from that. Well, there were about 150 of us. We did a short march with Madison Cawthorn down in Johnston County. And yes, very good dude. He was very cool to meet. So after our march, And the guy who set this all up was just a local businessman who was concerned. He wasn't even running for office, but he donated a bunch of stuff for us to be able to do like hot dogs and sides and sit there and to interact with each other and have a great get together as, 3 helicopters are whirring above us. And then I believe it was about 5 people on the opposition side. They're on this part of the parking lot. We're on this part of the parking lot. They make their way over to us to specifically pick a fight. If you were there to just say your piece in front of the Board of Education, by all means, go ahead. If you're there to get your 5 minutes of fame holding a sign that says Black Lives Matter, you're not there for the students. You're not there, and by all means, get your own stage, do your own platform, call the news in, have them cover you and your Black Lives Matter, if that's what you want to abdicate. But these people who are going after someone's employment for simply being a part of that group, that's not acceptable behavior, especially for someone who's on a board of education.
Well, I mean, it's like I said, it's indicative of a bigger problem. This is what Merrick Garland and Biden's DOJ want. I mean, that's what they've done. They don't want to go after terrorists. They want to go after parents who are standing in the way of their agenda. And I mean, did you mention that who did the news interview? Did you mention that?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Because you had 150 people there for the message.
Yes.
But at the same time, who did they actually interview?
Well, they chopped up a bunch of different things and interviewed people and purposely asked them misleading questions to make them look like they didn't know about the topic, to make them look like they were just there and they were stupid. One of the questions, the parent, all right, Miss Daisy is a little concerned about that cat next door. But one of the questions that one of these news anchors asked, the woman had a shirt on that said, "I do not co-parent with the government," which is true.
I like it, yeah.
I don't co-parent with the government. Right. And he said, "Well, you send your kids to public school. Isn't that co-parenting?" No.
Do these people understand what public servants are?
No, they don't. And they don't understand how the school system is meant to work.
Oh, little, go ahead. Come here.
So, I know, she's just going nuts. So, the idea that you can ask someone, well, sending your kids to school, isn't that co-parenting? No, because I don't expect the teachers to raise my children.
Exactly. This is it. So much of this generation views school as their babysitters. It's daycare. That's what they view it as. So they don't care, which has allowed these individuals, these idealistically driven individuals, to seep in and take over.
Well, and it has more to it, and it's not even just the idea of daycare, because even if it was daycare, I don't expect the daycare to raise my child.
Oh, that's true.
I expect them to have specific rules, to have a handbook, to have guidelines to the way that my child will interact. But as far as raising my child, and the fact that they now have classes that focus on social emotional learning.
Yeah.
But we're taking away money from things like gym class and art class and math and science and reading and history so that they can go spend an hour with a counselor. And not that counseling is a bad thing. If you choose to send your child to a counselor, that is on you as a parent. Yeah. That is a part of their personality and part of their personal growth that I am responsible for as a parent.
True.
We need to look at these roles and let educators know that they're there to be educators.
True.
So there's certain subjects that you cover. And I remember even growing up in a very small town and having a teacher who brought up the issue of abortion. Okay. And wanted to have a discussion about it in class. I don't believe that he should have done that.
I would agree.
I don't believe that that is a discussion that you need to expose children to. Yep. And everybody can say, oh, well, then send your kids to private school. No, my tax money goes to pay these people's salaries.
Yep. That's why all they do is whenever school choice gets on the ballot, they shoot it down. They want that money. they know if we get school choice, then we will just say, okay, because I mean, yeah, send your kid to private school. Cool. Give me my taxes back.
Yes.
Because that is my money.
Yes.
Hence, public servant. They don't
And
run
even
it.
if it is the idea that you can opt out, great.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Are you interested in your kid going to public school this year? Check. No. All right, cool. Here's the portion of your taxes you can have. Send your kid wherever you want them.
And we know more and more people who are choosing homeschooling.
That's true.
Which makes me go, okay, but you're still taking money from all of these people.
Yeah. I mean, homeschooling has gotten a huge following just because of the fact that these are basically, they're turning into it's kind of a government education. Like, not in the way of government-funded education, but like the ideology that our government currently has is being pushed. They're telling kids, don't tell your parents. They're pushing these ideologies and trying to separate them. Don't listen to your parents. Don't tell them until blah, blah, blah. It's getting out of hand. And we're getting to the point where, I mean, the homeschooling movement is indicative of the bigger problem that people have just lost faith. They destroyed the faith in the institutions, everything of that nature. But, I mean, it's the tip of the iceberg. The corruption has just, the rot has gotten so deep that, I mean, I'm glad the movement's here. Better late than never.
Well, I mean, it needed to go the way that it did.
It needed to jumpstart.
Yes.
I mean, the dude sitting on the couch was practically comatose, so we really had to zap him to get him up.
Yes, and there's a lot of situations where bad parenting is involved.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and I mean, we have a family full of educators. Your mom's an educator, my sister's an educator. Like, my brother-in-law. Like, there's a lot of people who work in that system. But would they have to remember where their line is drawn as a teacher, where their line is drawn as a superintendent, and trying to get a parent fired? I can understand if she had made a credible threat against someone on the school board, then that's when the police need to be involved. But going behind her back to an employer to say, well, do you know what? This is that cancel culture that we talked about.
It is.
It's not within the bounds of the law. It is completely disregarding everything that society is built upon.
Ideologically driven and targeting characters they do not agree with.
And if you're going to have someone at the top of the ladder act like this, then what does the rest of the structure within that school look like?
So true.
Because this is the leader.
Yep. This is who they look to.
Yeah, this isn't like a teacher who had an argument with a parent and...
Luckily, we have come a long ways, and people are fighting the school boards more than ever. The best thing we can do is basically shine a light on them, expose them to the light, and they will melt. They will scatter like roaches, but that's what it is. It's a fight, but the kids are worth fighting for. All right, my dear. I do think that our lovely little puppy is getting a little antsy,
Yes.
so I think we should wrap this up. As always, I am Nick. You can find me at Grizzly Mantes.
And I am Miss Monica, and if you enjoy our show, make sure that you subscribe and smash that like button.
Yeah, totally. Interesting culture. Smash the like button, hit the subscribe, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that good stuff.